All right, guys, coming back to lesson 4, the Plain Indian Wars. You do have a unit 2 quiz right in here, so caution with that. Let's go ahead and jump right into the Plain Indian Wars. Lesson 4, it's not going to be nice. Forgive me if I'm not enthusiastic about this era in U.S. history, but it's just not pretty. Coercion, desecrated, and evict, words for today. The Great Sioux War, Nez Perce and his people, the Ghost Dance Wars, and the Dawes Act is what we have. Some videos. You have 11 questions. All right, let's go ahead and get right into this. So, from 1865 on the plain, Native Americans and the U.S. government were in a state of war. In a 6-year period from 69 to 75, the U.S. Army fought more than 200 skirmishes against Native American tribes, or 200 battles. In the early 18th century, the Sioux had been moved from Minnesota to South Dakota. Some of the Sioux had come freely during the 1700s, taking the territory, including the Cheyenne. The Sioux were a fierce and proud people with a long tradition. In 1876, the Dakota was started by construction of the North Pacific Railroad and by gold prospectors in the Black Hills. The Black Hills is where they had Mount Rushmore. The Black Hills was a sacred Native Americans. They would not stand by and see it desecrated, right? To be treated with no respect. The Great Sioux War of 76 resulted from these encroachments. This war included the Lakota Sioux, some Cheyenne, and a few Arapaho. The movie Prey, the Predator movie Prey, these are some of these people. The tribes sent representatives to D.C. Nothing happened. President Grant sent troops to keep prospectors out of the Black Hills and evict those. Sorry, small pause. However, the government eventually decided to let prospectors in. The decision led to a gold rush. Native leaders feared the encroachment would lead to the end of the bison. Some of them determined to fight. Back and forth, right? The Great Sioux War began in spring of 1876. Technically, this war was led by Cheyennes. The most famous of this war occurred at the Little Battle, occurred at Little Bighorn in southern Montana. General George Custer Armstrong, right here, underestimating his fighting capability of the Cheyenne of 2,500 warriors, led several companies to the 7th Cavalry into a trap near Little Bighorn. Outnumbered, his entire command, 210, was wiped out. Other companies of the 7th were pinned down a few miles away, had to be rescued by the main army force. The massacre at Little Bighorn, where the natives actually won, a good one. The victory at Little Bighorn led to an increase of the U.S. Army forces in the area. Eventually, agency officials and army officials were able to convince native leaders they could not win. The Crazy Horse, just the Cheyenne were sent to Oklahoma to live on reservations. However, conditions there were hard, and some Cheyenne escaped to travel back north. Eventually, these bands were given a reservation in Montana. Sitting Bull refused to bring his people. He took them to Canada. They suffered because of a declining population of bison. He was forced to bring his people back, and they lived in the reservations. Short video on Sitting Bull. While the Sioux Cheyenne Arapaho uprising did not result in freedom for natives, they made their point. The Black Hills region, Dakotas, was never ceded to the United States. Mining interests and railroads came to the region and took over. The United States occupied the territory in violation of its treaties. The Supreme Court ruled in 1980 that the U.S. occupation of these lands is illegal, and the U.S. paid the Sioux nations for their land. However, the Sioux refused to take the money, wanting to regain control. The money remains in interest-bearing accounts to this day. So they're making money off of this. Right. Major battles. Let me turn off this music. Right. Click on the location to see these battles. So Pyramid Lake, 1860, 1862, over in Montana. Right. Places left and right, 1865, 66. It just continues, guys. There's battles galore. Battles. Little Bighorn, if we just discussed. Battles across the West. 81. I wonder if there is a map that shows, oh, look, they're fighting in Mexico here. Canyon de los Embudos. 87, 90. Wow. Nez Perce lived in the Pacific Northwest in the area of the present-day state of Washington, Oregon, under various forms of coercion, or they were forced. The Nez Perce chief signed a treaty giving up large of their lands to the U.S. government. They were guaranteed the use of large reservations and perpetual hunting rights in the area they surrendered. However, gold was discovered in 1860, and their lands were overrun by prospectors. From June to October, the Nez Perce fought skirmishes with the army and tried to flee from Idaho into Montana into Canada. Nez Perce fought valiantly and brilliantly, but the army outnumbered them and eventually forced their surrender. They were sent to Kansas, reservations towards Oklahoma. Others, including Joseph, that were sent to reservations in Washington state. Here's a picture of Chief Joseph. All right. Ghost dances. In the 1890s, the Sioux people had become dispirited. They understood that they could not resist the larger, powerful army to the U.S., so they turned to their ancient ways. This seeking help turned into a popular religious or spiritual movement called the ghost dance, dancing around fires and praying. To an extent, the Indian agents and military commanders became concerned that the Sioux would become unruly if the ghost dances revival were allowed to continue, so they ordered tribes to end these ceremonies. A fight broke out, and shooting and Sitting Bull was killed. It's just tragic, guys. More deaths, more deaths, more deaths. I'm almost done with my time of 7 minutes. Essentially, the Dawes Act was passed. The new policy was made official in 87 by the Dawes Act, which broke up reservations and gave land to individual families. Each family was to receive 160 acres. Each child in the family would receive 40 acres. Single persons would receive 40 acres. And that's how the government dealt with it. Buffalo Bill in the Wild West, a show pretty much to wow people, like a shooting show. Read these on your own. Here's Annie Oakley, awesome marksman. And then another short video for you guys. You have 11 questions. Best of luck to you all. Adios.